It all started with something as ordinary as a can of tuna, yet that small, seemingly insignificant moment unraveled everything. The truth about my wife's betrayal hit me like a freight train. How could something so mundane expose the deepest betrayal? I never imagined this would be the way I'd find out, but here we are. Let me take you back. I've been married for almost 20 years now. My wife, Maria, and I are in our mid-40s, and we got married young, much younger than most people we knew. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but what marriage is. We've had our ups and downs, like everyone else. The biggest strain between us, though, has always been finances. When we started out, we were pretty much on equal footing. But over time, that changed. My career took off, while hers stalled. She took time off to care for our children, and that left me with the financial burden. Now, there's a big gap between what we make, and it's something we've argued about, but it hasn't been a constant problem. I work every day except Sunday, doing what I can to support my family. And yes, being away from home so often means I don't always know what's going on, but I trusted her. I didn't see any red flags, until one day, I did. The smallest thing, a can of tuna. It might sound ridiculous, but hear me out. You see, Maria hates tuna. She's always hated it. It's the kind of thing she'd never voluntarily eat. So, when I found an open can of tuna on the kitchen counter, it threw me off. The kids weren't home, they were at their uncle's for the summer, and there was no one else around. No one except someone else. My first thought? She's cheating. I don't even know why that was the first thing that crossed my mind, but it was. And, of course, I couldn't find her. It was like she had vanished. I thought maybe she'd had a friend over, someone who made themselves a tuna sandwich without telling me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had to know more, but I couldn't confront her yet. No, I needed to dig deeper, secretly. So, I went back to work, but my mind was racing. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about the tuna. What was going on? When I got home that evening, Maria was there, acting like everything was normal. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She told me it was boring, just the usual. But something didn't add up. She claimed she'd gone shopping in the morning and spent the rest of the day at home. That didn't match what I saw earlier. She wasn't home when I came back that afternoon. I knew she was lying. And the tuna? That was the smoking gun. We've been together long enough for me to know she would never, ever eat tuna, let alone make it for someone else. But that's exactly what she had done. She had either let someone into the house or, worse, invited someone she couldn't even mention. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more proof. So, I waited for my chance. That chance came one night when she was asleep, and I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed her phone off the nightstand and started snooping. I know, it's not the right thing to do, but at that point, I had to know. Her messages? Nothing incriminating. So, I dug deeper, scrolling through her call logs. And there it was, a call from a number that wasn't saved. It wasn't a wrong number or some random caller. This was a 2-minute conversation. I took a picture of the number, then ran it through an app, Truecaller. It came up as Dr. Rosen. I recognized that name. It was her doctor. But why wasn't the number saved? She talked to him all the time. Then I decided to check her Facebook Messenger. And that's when everything changed. The first message at the top made my heart drop, "Love you too." The last conversation she had? With Andrew Rosen. That name didn't just raise an eyebrow, it set every alarm in my brain into overdrive. He wasn't just a doctor. No. He was someone else. The conversation was casual at first, but as I scrolled, it became clear he'd come over earlier that day. She'd told him I had already left for work. After that, the texts got more personal. "Sorry I had to leave so abruptly, the cons of being a doctor," he wrote. And her response? "I miss you, We'll find a place to meet up this weekend. I couldn't breathe. I knew I had to gather all the evidence, so I started recording her screen, slowly scrolling through everything. If I was going to confront her, I needed irrefutable proof. And now, I had it. But what was I going to do with it? Would she deny everything, or would she admit what I already knew? Only time would tell. I had to confront her. That was the moment everything clicked into place. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, had been cheating on me with her doctor. I realized it all in one flash. He had come over to their house for their secret rendezvous, and at some point, maybe after making a sandwich, he had to rush back to the hospital. Had she walked him to his car? Followed him to the hospital? Or did she just go out to buy groceries, like she said? But by the time I came back, there were no shopping bags in sight, and she should have been home from the store already. I couldn't find all the answers without confronting her, but the one answer I had been dreading was there. I knew the truth. But that's when everything started to feel complicated. How could something that hurt so much also feel strangely relieving? I had spent 20 years with her. 20 years gone. And maybe it was just one affair, maybe she had been at it for years, I couldn't know. But I didn't care anymore. I was consumed with rage. I wanted to hurt her, really hurt her. I wanted to throw things, scream, do something that would make her feel the same pain that was roaring inside me. But even as the anger bubbled up inside, another emotion crept in, relief. I realized I had just lost 20 years to someone who had betrayed me, someone I should never have trusted. But what if the next 40 years could be better? Free from her, free from the lies? That, at least, was a blessing in disguise. I fought to keep my composure, using alcohol to numb the storm inside me. I fell asleep on the couch. There was no way I could sleep next to her. Not after everything. Not in that bed, the one she'd shared with him. But before I drifted off, I did what any rational person would do. I hired a private investigator. I needed to know where they were meeting. I needed proof. I couldn't rely on her lies any longer. The weekend arrived, and my wife told me she was spending the day with an old friend from college, someone named Ashley. I acted uninterested, zoning out while she spoke. But then I did something sneaky. I hit record on my phone. When I asked her to repeat herself, she was clearly annoyed, but she obliged. Ashley. That was the name. And just like that, the wheels were turning. Minutes later, I got a message from the private investigator. He was on her tail. I told him to do his job, to get the evidence I needed. I waited. I didn't hear from him until much later, but I couldn't help myself. I texted my wife. "How's your day with Ashley?" I asked. It took her 2 hours to reply. Her answer was short, but it was enough to fuel my suspicions further. When I finally heard from the PI, he gave me the details. He had followed her, and she had met with another man. Not just any man, Dr. Rosen, her affair partner. The investigator had managed to capture photos and even a video of them together. The timestamps were clear. They went into a hotel. 7 hours later, they came out, kissed, and walked to my wife's car. I could feel the disgust welling up inside me. This wasn't just an affair, this was a betrayal on every level. On Monday, I picked up the evidence from the PI. The photos were crystal clear. I saw her, hand in hand with Dr. Rosen, walking into a hotel. And later, I saw them kissing, passionately, outside her car. She had spent hours with him. 7 hours in total. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. In fact, I wasn't sure I even wanted to. But then, something deeper cut through. What about the kids? Could they be his? Could my own children be someone else's? The thought devastated me. It hurt more than her affair ever could. I had to figure everything out. And I had to make her hurt. There was so much I wanted to do. As for Dr. Rosen, he would pay too. I'd shake his hand once. I'd make him wish he never crossed me. The PI had done his job, but I wasn't done yet. There were so many ways I could get even. The idea of revenge began to take shape, starting with her. First, I'd redecorate the house, change the walk-in closet into a shrine to the one thing she hated most, tuna. And as for Dr. Rosen, I would send him a thank you note for the role he'd played in liberating me from a marriage full of lies. But the kids? Should I even trust them? Could they really be mine? This was only the beginning. But I knew I had to be patient. Every move needed to count. And then, an update. The past few days had been a blur, but I couldn't let everything go unanswered. I had finally hired a divorce lawyer, but I was taking my time. I had one priority: I needed to know the truth about my children. They had just returned from their uncle's place, and the questions were still burning inside me. The weight in my chest was unbearable. But when I walked into that lab, the relief flooded over me. Both kids were mine. I was so thankful I could have cried. To have that confirmation, to know that at least something in my life had been right, felt like a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't just a victory. It was my life, my future, my children, secured. I couldn't believe it was finally done. But the real work was just beginning. Next stop, the divorce lawyer. I marched in, documents in hand. The infidelity was obvious. It was like she had been playing a game and I had just cracked the code. She had covered her tracks so well, but I got the hint, and once I had the evidence, it was over. The lawyer found it almost comical how something as bizarre as a can of tuna became the key to exposing her. A stupid can of tuna. Who knew? But no, it wasn't enough to just file the papers quietly. Oh no, I needed to make a statement. I needed her to feel it. Feel the devastation. I wasn't going to let her slink away unnoticed. I wanted her to face it. And where better than at her family's Thanksgiving dinner? Picture this: the entire family gathered around the table, filled with laughter and food, everyone blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. And then, the knock on the door. I volunteered to answer. I knew what was coming. A man, unfamiliar face, and when he asked for Maria, I welcomed him in. When he handed her the envelope, and the words "you've been served" hung in the air like a terrible omen, the entire room fell silent. I stayed calm, eating my turkey like nothing was wrong. Her confusion, her panic, oh, it was palpable. She opened the envelope, and as she looked at me, her face turned to stone. I didn't flinch. I didn't say a word. I simply continued eating, letting the silence stretch on. She croaked out a single, pitiful "why," right there in front of everyone. But this was it. This was my moment. I laid it all out. I told the truth she could never deny. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. No defense, no escape. I could see it in her eyes. She knew it was over. The silence was deafening. The whole family, her own family, sat there in shock, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. I asked for a piece of turkey, but no one moved. The chaos was suffocating, and I reveled in it. But eventually, it grew too awkward. I stood up, thanked everyone for the meal, and turned to leave. But just before I walked out the door, I dropped the final bombshell: she didn't belong there anymore. "Don't come home," I told her. I watched her break down as I walked away, but I had no remorse. And don't worry, the kids were already upstairs, oblivious. I didn't want them anywhere near this mess. I kept it together long enough to call them down, and I told them that their mom would be staying to help clean up. They didn't ask too many questions. The next step? Get Dr. Rosen. He needed to be held accountable. This man, my wife's affair partner, was also her doctor, her trusted doctor. So I used every resource available to make sure his unethical behavior wasn't just ignored. With the help of the PI, I reported him, and the medical board didn't waste time. His job was gone. His license? Suspended for 5 years. Oh, the sweet satisfaction. I'm not saying it was karma, but it sure felt like it. The divorce was the next battlefield. It dragged on longer than I wanted, but I knew I had the upper hand. The evidence was undeniable. Her lawyers tried to spin some sad story about me being absent, about her needing love, but it was laughable. The judge saw right through it. In the end, I walked away with the house, my car, and custody of the kids. Sure, there was alimony, but compared to what it could have been, it was a small price to pay. She didn't even get to fight for custody. I'm the one who's there for them every day. I hate that 20 years of my life were wasted on someone I couldn't trust. But in the end, it gave me my kids, and a valuable life lesson. Trust your gut. When something feels off, it probably is. And let's not forget the moral of the story: always keep an eye out for the small things. Like a can of tuna. It could be the key to everything. Who knew Sunkist could be the star witness in a divorce? Maybe they should be sending me a sponsorship check for the product placement. I should be getting paid for this. And honestly, serving divorce papers at the Thanksgiving table? Next level drama. Who needs reality TV when you've got real-life entertainment like that? The family was on the edge of their seats, wondering what would happen next. The turkey? Probably wondering why it was caught in the crossfire. But the real highlight? Reporting Dr. Rosen. It's like taking down a character in a medical drama. I couldn't have scripted it better. He thought he could get away with it. Not on my watch. In the end, I got everything I needed: custody, the house, and the peace of mind knowing that I can move forward. The moral here is simple: life's too short to live in lies. Take control, trust your instincts, and never let anyone, especially a doctor, play you for a fool. Now, the real question: what should I do next? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this saga. See you next time.